In this lesson, I'm going to walk you through the process of using a fluid effect as a texture element. Alright, so I've got lesson 26 opened up, and I've got just this basic geometry here of a paint bucket. And what I'd like to do is use fluids to actually texture this paint bucket. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is we'll first add a brand new material, and I'm just going to choose a blend material. Okay, and under color, I'm going to go ahead and open up my options here. And one thing that you're going to want to do is normally you have it set, the 2D texture is set to normal. We're going to instead use a projection. So we're going to project this onto our object. And I'm going to use a fluid texture 2D. All right. By default, the texture type is planar. We're going to actually change this to cylindrical. And I'm going to choose fit to bounding box. I'm sorry, cylindrical. There we go. And since we want this to wrap all the way around, I'm going to middle click and drag this entire manipulator right over. Okay, so let's move our fluid simulation out here so we can actually see what's going on. And you'll notice that, we'll just choose this from the side view, my container is a bit short. I don't really need all this extra space. So let's work on our container shape first. So our size and height, let's just see what happens if I set this to 5. Let's see if that will work. Maybe 6. Okay, and our size and width is probably going to need to be bigger, so I'm just going to do a double, so we'll do 12. And then I'm going to leave my resolution at something like 60 and 60, just for now. Actually, we'll do 60 and 30, just so we can get the speed. All right, so here's our fluid simulation, and all I have to do is add an emitter or add some color to this, and it will show up on my paint bucket. So let's just go ahead and add an emitter. We'll move that to the top, like so. And we already in shaded, so let's just play this back. Give ourselves enough frames. And then you can kind of see it's starting to happen right there. Let's go ahead and take our grid and let's start making some adjustments here. So for example, let's go down to the dynamic simulations. I'm going to increase my viscosity a little bit so I get a little bit of gooiness. I'm going to increase my friction. Let's go down to the details and our density. We're going to do a -1 buoyancy. So let's just play that back. Cool. Get a nice drip, so that's kind of nice. We're going to have all of that is set to 0. Let's go ahead and now go down to shading, and let's color this up. So we're going to have no transparency, and right now we're setting this from black to 0. Let's go ahead and set that off. Let's set our incandescence to density, and then let's take our opacity and set it to constant. Okay, so let's go ahead and arrange our colors here. Okay, I'm going to say none for our color here, and let's just choose white. Okay, now you could use layered textures and all kinds of cool stuff to adjust all of this, but let's just move our emitter over. Let's see what happens here. Looks like our color needs to be tweaked a little bit. Very cool. And you can see that this is now translating right over. So we can go ahead and create more emitters on here. I'll go ahead and make a new emitter, move it up to the top. Okay, and let's render that and see what we get. So you see we get this nice dynamic texture that's happening. Let's go ahead and take a look at the hypershade and see what's happening here. So we're going to grab this bucket and I'll go ahead and map out the shader. And here it is right here, this blend. And if we look, we have this fluid 2D texture connected to time, right? So it has a time factor that's driving this simulation, and it's going into the projection. Now we could also take this projection and plug it right into bump map. And doing so will create, let me re-render this for you, a nice little bump effect right here. So we could blur that a little bit and soften that edge, and then what we'll want to do is go ahead and reverse it. So our depth is 1. We're going to put in -1, and that might be a little bit much. Let's put in -0.5. All right, and let's re-render. There we go. Got a nice little edge here. Now, mind you, the quality is really low. We're doing everything in draft mode, but you get the idea that you can have some really, really cool simulations driving textures. And you can plug this into displacements. You can plug this into other textures. So it's a really neat look at a challenge that a lot of people are going to face. Now, mind you, all we have to do now is crank up this quality. So if I do 120 by 60, and redo our simulation. It's going to take it just a second. There we go. And we're going to see a much higher quality output. You can see there. And mind you, it is kind of goofy looking, but you know, it's a neat look of having a dynamic simulated paint drip from your can, all by setting up a simple 2D texture as a projection.